A racist cop beats a black teen in broad daylight. The teenager, confused and scared, stumbles back but refuses to fall. She stands tall, her face a mixture of shock and defiance. "Why are you doing this?" she shouts. But the officer doesn't answer. His grip tightens, and he shoves her against the side of the car. The crowd watches, some in fear, others in disbelief. The teen continues to resist, pushing herself away from him. "I haven't done anything wrong," she says, her voice trembling but strong. But the officer, his face filled with anger, yells at her to stay quiet, raising his hand as though to strike again. As the tension grows, the officer seems more and more out of control. His movements become erratic, and the crowd grows uneasy. Everyone is watching, but no one dares to intervene. Just when it seems like things will escalate even further, a voice cuts through the tension. A man in a military uniform steps forward, his presence immediately commanding attention. With a calm yet firm expression, he approaches the officer. The crowd quiets, wondering if this stranger will make a difference. The officer freezes for a moment, clearly recognizing someone, in the man's gaze. The tension thickens as the crowd waits for what will happen next. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. The officer, still gripping the young girl's arm, eyes the man in military uniform with a mix of confusion and fear. The crowd is silent, holding its collective breath. The man in the uniform, standing tall with his chest out and his posture sharp, speaks clearly, his voice unwavering. "What's going on here?" he asks the officer, his tone demanding an answer. The officer hesitates for a second, clearly uncomfortable. This girl is being difficult. She was about to cause a scene. She needs to learn respect. The crowd murmurs in disbelief. The teen, still shaken but now with more courage, speaks up. "I wasn't doing anything wrong. He just attacked me for no reason." The officer looks away, trying to avoid eye contact. But the man in the uniform steps closer, his presence overwhelming. "I don't think this is how you handle situations, officer," he says. The officer finally looks up, his expression shifting from anger to realization as he sees the man's uniform, a general's insignia clearly visible on his chest. The crowd starts to murmur louder now. The officer begins to stutter, his authority clearly crumbling. I didn't know. The man interrupts him firmly. "You didn't know who you were dealing with, did you?" The officer stands motionless, unsure of what to do. The crowd watches in stunned silence, the situation feeling almost surreal. The officer finally takes a step back, his grip loosening on the girl. The man looks at her, nodding for her to step away. "You're free to go, young lady," he says. The girl, still trembling but filled with a new sense of relief and empowerment, steps back, her face showing a mix of confusion and gratitude. The officer stands there, embarrassed, as the general's words weigh heavy on him. The crowd slowly begins to disperse, some in shock, others exchanging whispers. No one had expected this situation to end like this. But one thing is clear. The balance of power had shifted, and the officer's actions were exposed for what they were. What do you think about how this situation was handled? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. As the officer stands there, still stunned by the presence of the general, the young girl begins to breathe more easily. Her heart still races from the encounter, but the weight of fear is slowly lifting. Her father, the general, steps forward, his eyes locked on the officer who had previously threatened his daughter. The officer stands with his head bowed, unwilling to meet the general's gaze. The tension in the air is thick as the crowd watches, waiting for something to happen. The officer has been put in his place, but there is no apology, no attempt to make things right. The general, now standing beside his daughter, turns to address the officer, his voice calm but firm. "Do you have any idea who you just tried to intimidate?" he asks. The officer, still speechless, shakes his head, clearly realizing that he's made a grave mistake. "You were wrong to treat my daughter like that," the general continues, his tone unwavering. "And now you will face the consequences for your actions." The crowd begins to murmur, the realization that the general is a figure of authority settling in. People are whispering about what they've just witnessed. They all thought the officer would get away with it, but now it's clear that his actions will not go unpunished. The officer steps back, his hands raised slightly, as if in surrender. He tries to speak, but no words come out. He knows he can't defend what he's done. The general looks at the young girl, now standing beside him, and gives her a reassuring nod. "You're okay now, sweetheart. Don't worry about him." She looks up at her father, her eyes wide with relief and confusion. "But why did he do that?" "I didn't do anything wrong." The general places a hand on her shoulder, his voice softening as he speaks. "There are people who think they have power over others, especially when they think they can intimidate them because of who they are. But we don't let them get away with it. We stand up for what's right." The officer, now fully aware of the gravity of his mistake, stands motionless. His career, his integrity, all of it is on the line now. He had targeted the wrong person, and now the consequences were becoming clear. As the crowd begins to disperse, many of them look toward the general with respect, admiration, and gratitude. They had witnessed something powerful, a father standing up for his daughter, refusing to let injustice slide. It wasn't just about the officer's actions. It was about a father's love and the courage to stand up to authority when it's in the wrong. The officer, still frozen in place, eventually turns away, humiliated and defeated. The general's presence has silenced him. He knows there's no point in arguing or defending his actions. The girl, now standing next to her father, holds her head high. She knows that the moment of fear has passed, and with her father by her side, she feels strong and empowered. "Thank you, Dad," she whispers. "You're welcome," the general responds softly, smiling at her. "Just remember, no one has the right to make you feel small or inferior. Stand tall and be proud of who you are." The crowd begins to dissipate, but the message of the moment lingers in the air. It's a reminder that power doesn't lie in uniforms or titles. It lies in standing up for what's right and never backing down when injustice is happening right in front of you. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. As the officer walks away, still shaking his head in disbelief, the general stands tall, holding his daughter's hand. His protective stance makes it clear that he will not allow anyone to harm his family, no matter who they are. The general's voice carries over the lingering murmurs of the crowd as he turns to face the bystanders. "The actions you just witnessed here," the general says, his voice calm but powerful, "are the kind that should never be tolerated, especially from someone in a position of authority. If we stand back and let these things happen without consequences, we all become part of the problem. It's up to each of us to stand up against injustice, no matter where we see it." His words resonate deeply with the crowd. There are people nodding in agreement, their faces showing a mix of respect and awe for the general's courage. The girl, still standing next to her father, feels a sense of pride swell within her chest. She looks at him, her face a mix of admiration and gratitude. "You did the right thing, Dad," she says quietly, her voice soft but full of conviction. "I didn't think he was going to stop. I thought it was going to get worse." The general looks down at her, offering a gentle smile. You don't ever have to be afraid, sweetheart. Not while I'm here." The officer, who had walked away with his head low, pauses just a few feet away. He turns slightly, still not daring to meet the general's gaze. He knows his actions have caught up with him. The realization of the consequences hits him harder than anything else. He has now been exposed for the bigotry he tried to hide behind his badge, and there's no escaping the truth. As the officer stands there, the general steps forward again, his voice firm and unwavering. "You need to understand the damage you've done today. It's not just about a girl or her father. It's about how you made an entire community feel. You don't get to decide who deserves respect. We all do." The officer swallows hard, his pride shattered, but he doesn't reply. The weight of his actions is enough of a response. Behind the general, the onlookers begin to disperse, but many of them stay, lingering to watch the rest of the unfolding drama. Some are now speaking to each other in hushed tones, their eyes on the officer who stands in his humiliation. They've witnessed something important. A man of authority being held accountable, not because of his uniform or title, but because he had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. The general now turns back to his daughter, offering her a reassuring squeeze of the hand. This is what it means to stand up for what's right. No matter how difficult it might seem, we never stay silent in the face of injustice. The girl nods, feeling the strength and wisdom in her father's words. She watches as the officer walks away, head still low, his once imposing stature now deflated and defeated. For the first time in a long time, she realizes the real power lies not in the uniform or the badge, but in the courage to stand up, speak out, and never let fear control your actions. "Dad," she begins again, her voice more confident this time, "I think I'm ready to speak up more. I don't want anyone to feel like I did today. No one should." The general smiles warmly at her. "That's the spirit. You've got the power inside you. Now it's time to use it." The lesson is clear for everyone who witnessed it. The fight against injustice starts with speaking up, even when the world tells you to stay quiet. It's a powerful reminder that no matter who you are, standing tall in the face of adversity is the first step toward making change. As the father and daughter walk away, the bystanders watch, their hearts stirred by the courage they just witnessed. The officer, now a symbol of shame, retreats into the background, his authority no longer respected. The general and his daughter leave with their heads held high, knowing they've made a difference today. Their strength and courage have become an example for all, proving that justice will always prevail when good people refuse to stay silent. How would you stand up against injustice in a similar situation? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. As the general and his daughter leave the scene, they walk with quiet strength, but the silence around them speaks volumes. The officer stands at a distance, still unable to face the reality of what he has done. The crowd has now dispersed, but their lingering looks, filled with judgment and disbelief, make it clear that they won't forget what happened today. The message has been received. What happened to the general's daughter will not be tolerated again. The general places a reassuring hand on his daughter's shoulder as they make their way back to their car. "This is what it looks like when you stand up, sweetheart. It's not always easy, but you did great today." The girl looks up at her father, a small smile forming on her lips. "I didn't feel great at first, Dad. I was scared, but you made me feel like I had a voice. I didn't know I could stand up for myself like that." The general smiles warmly, his voice full of pride. "You've always had a voice. Sometimes it just takes a little courage to use it. You've got the strength to fight for what's right, and today You showed everyone what that looks like." As they drive away, the general's thoughts turn to the bigger picture. He knows that what happened today is just one example of a much larger issue. It's not just about one officer, but about the systemic issues of racism that continue to affect communities everywhere. He is determined that his daughter will grow up in a world where speaking out against injustice is the norm, not the exception. "Dad, do you think things will really change?" the girl asks, her voice filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. The general pauses for a moment, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "I hope so. Change doesn't come easily, but it always starts with someone being brave enough to speak up. What we did today is part of that change. It's about standing up and demanding respect for everyone, no matter their skin color." The girl nods, thinking deeply about her father's words. She had always admired his strength, but today she had witnessed firsthand what real courage looked like. It wasn't just about being strong in a fight. It was about being willing to stand up, to speak truth to power, and to make sure that no one felt like they had to suffer in silence. As they pull into their driveway, the girl's mind races with the possibilities of what comes next. She's no longer the scared girl who felt helpless in the face of injustice. She's someone who knows that standing up for what's right isn't just important. It's necessary. "Dad," she says as they step out of the car, "I think I want to do more. I want to be part of the solution. I don't want people to feel the way I did today." The general looks at her, a proud smile on his face. "I think that's a great idea, and you'll have my full support." Inside their home, the girl reflects on the power of her actions and the lessons learned that day. She had never realized just how much her voice could matter. But now, more than ever, she knows that speaking up is the first step in creating the world she wants to live in. A world where everyone is treated with respect, and no one is afraid to stand up for what is right. The general's pride in his daughter swells, knowing that she's taken the first step toward becoming someone who won't just stand by in the face of injustice, but will actively fight against it. And as the world continues to change, it will be young people like her who lead the way. How would you help someone facing discrimination in their life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The car comes to a halt, and the general turns to look at his daughter. A sense of pride and hope fills his heart as he sees the new fire in her eyes. She is no longer just the young girl who was afraid of confrontation. Today, she is someone who has found her voice, someone ready to make a difference. "Dad, I think I really get it now," she says softly, her voice steady but determined. "I understand how important it is to stand up for myself and for others." The general smiles, his hand gently resting on hers. "You've always had it in you. Sometimes it just takes a moment to realize it. Today you showed yourself and everyone around you that you are stronger than any obstacle." She nods, her gaze now filled with a quiet strength. As they step out of the car, she pauses for a moment, letting the weight of the day's events settle in her mind. She had feared the worst when the officer first approached her. But now she realized that confronting the issue head-on was the only way to bring about real change. Inside the house, the general's wife is waiting. She knows that today has been a turning point for their daughter. As she hugs her daughter tightly, she says, "I saw how you stood up for yourself today, honey. I'm so proud of you." The girl smiles, feeling the warmth of her mother's embrace. "It wasn't easy, but I felt like I had to do it. It wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who faces this kind of treatment every day." The general watches his daughter, a deep sense of admiration in his heart. "That's right. What you did today was bigger than just standing up for yourself. It was about making sure that everyone is treated with respect. That's what real change looks like. As they sit down to dinner, the girl's mind continues to turn over the events of the day. She remembers the officer's harsh words, the way he tried to belittle her. But what stands out most in her mind is the way she found the courage to speak up, even when it felt impossible. I was scared at first, she admits, looking at her parents. But when I remembered what you've taught me, I knew I had to stand firm. The general looks at her, a proud gleam in his eye. It takes a lot of courage to speak up, especially when you know the system isn't always on your side. But that's the kind of courage that creates real change. Her mother, equally proud, adds, "You didn't just speak up for yourself, honey. You spoke up for all the people who feel like their voices don't matter. You showed everyone that we all deserve respect." The girl's thoughts begin to drift to what comes next. She's not just thinking about how she can change the way people see her. She's thinking about how she can help others find their own voices. She knows that this is just the beginning, that real change takes time and effort, but she's ready for it. "What do you think I should do next, Dad?" she asks. The general leans back in his chair, considering her question. "You've already done the hardest part. You stood up. Now it's about taking those steps to keep making a difference. Whether it's talking to others, raising awareness, or just showing kindness, it all adds up." The girl nods, a sense of purpose growing inside her. "I want to keep helping. I don't want people to feel like I did today." The general reaches across the table, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And you won't. I'm proud of you for speaking out. That's what creates change. When you speak up, it inspires others to do the same." The rest of the evening passes quietly, but the message of what the girl has learned today lingers in the air. The general knows that his daughter has taken a big step forward in her journey, and he feels more confident than ever that she will continue to make an impact. As they finish dinner, the girl's heart swells with a quiet determination. She knows she has a long road ahead, but she's ready to walk it. The world may not always be kind or fair, but it's her voice, her courage, and her unwavering belief in justice that will guide her every step of the way. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself or others in the face of injustice? Share your story in the comments below. The sun was setting as they wrapped up dinner, and the girl sat at the table, her mind still swirling with everything that had happened earlier. The courage to stand up to the officer, to face the difficult situation head-on, was still fresh in her thoughts. It had taken everything she had to speak out, but now she felt something new, a sense of empowerment. She knew that this was just the beginning. Her mother, sensing the thoughts running through her daughter's mind, looked at her with pride. "You did something important today, honey," she said softly. "You made a choice that will stick with you forever. You chose to stand up." The girl smiled, a wave of emotion washing over her. She had never realized how powerful her voice could be until today. Her father's advice about taking action for the greater good resonated deeply. It wasn't just about confronting the officer. It was about confronting the system, about making sure others knew they weren't alone in their struggles. "I feel like there's more I can do," the girl admitted, her voice still a bit shaky but stronger than it had been before. "I want to keep fighting for what's right. I don't want anyone to feel the way I did." Her father, who had been quietly listening, leaned forward with a knowing look in his eyes. "You're not alone in this fight. There are people all around the world who are facing the same struggles. When you stand up, you inspire others to do the same. What you did today, it's bigger than just you." The girl nodded, her determination building. "I've always felt that change is possible, but now I see that it starts with people taking action. I don't want to wait for change. I want to be part of it." Her mother, ever supportive, smiled warmly. "And you already are. You've taken the first step. The next is showing others that standing up is always worth it." Her father added, "Exactly. It's not just about your voice. It's about making sure your actions align with your beliefs. When you act with integrity, the world will listen. You'll inspire others to do the same." As the night went on, they spoke about what the future could look like. The girl thought about how much power a simple act of standing up could have. She was filled with a sense of purpose, realizing that while she might have felt powerless at first, she had the strength to make a difference. "I want to make sure my friends know they can always speak up too," the girl said. "I know that sometimes it's hard, but it's the only way to create a change that will last." Her parents both nodded in agreement, their pride shining through in their smiles. "Exactly," her father said. "Every time someone takes a stand, it helps to push the world closer to a place of fairness. What you did today, it'll be part of something bigger," her mother added. "And when the world sees your courage, it gives them the strength to stand up too. We need more people like you who are willing to confront injustice and speak the truth." The girl sat back, taking it all in. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she had the power to change things. The knowledge that standing up for what's right could have a lasting impact filled her with hope. She knew this journey wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she wasn't going to give up. As the conversation shifted to other topics, she felt the weight of the day's events slowly dissipate, replaced with a calm sense of determination. She was not just one voice against injustice. She was a part of something much bigger, and she knew she could continue to make a difference. The dinner ended, and as her parents went about cleaning up, the girl looked out the window at the night sky. She felt ready to take on whatever challenge came her way, knowing that she had the strength and support of her family behind her. But more than that, she had found her own courage, and that was the most powerful thing of all. "I'm going to make a change," she whispered to herself, feeling the weight of her promise to herself and to the world. She knew it wouldn't happen overnight, but she also knew that every small step she took would add to the growing movement of people who believed in justice, fairness, and equality. Her mother, hearing her, walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know you will, sweetheart," she said softly. "And when you do, remember, you're never alone in this fight." The girl smiled, her heart swelling with pride. This was just the beginning, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to stand up for what was right? How did it feel? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The girl sat quietly in her room, her thoughts racing. After everything that had happened, she couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment that had washed over her. She had stood up to an unjust system, and now she had found her voice. But as she reflected on that moment, she realized that the journey wasn't over. It had just begun. Her parents were still in the kitchen, talking softly. The weight of what had transpired was still heavy on them, but they were proud. They knew that their daughter's actions would reverberate beyond that single moment in the classroom. It wasn't just about the confrontation. It was about the message it sent to everyone who had witnessed it. The girl's mother walked into the room, sitting beside her on the bed. "How are you feeling, honey?" she asked. Her voice filled with tenderness. "I feel like I did the right thing," the girl said, her voice steady, though her emotions were still raw. "But I also feel like there's more to do, Like the world isn't going to change just because of what happened today. Her mother smiled softly. You're right. But every small step counts. What you did today, standing up, speaking out, it's part of a bigger movement, and you're now part of that change. The girl nodded, but her mind was still filled with questions. Do you think I'll be able to keep fighting? I mean, it's scary. I don't know if I can handle it if it gets worse. Her mother's expression softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's. The fear will always be there, but you don't have to fight it alone. You have your family, and you have the power of your truth on your side. When you speak your truth, you give others the strength to do the same. The girl took a deep breath, the weight of her mother's words sinking in. It just feels like so much sometimes, like the system is so big, and I'm just one person. Her mother's voice was firm but full of love. But one person can make a difference. Look at what you've already done. You've shown others that it's okay to stand up. You've taught them that they can speak their truth without fear. That's how change begins. It starts with someone willing to speak out. The girl sat quietly for a moment, contemplating her mother's words. She had always believed that change was possible, but now she knew that it was within her reach. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be times when the fear felt overwhelming. But she was ready. She had to be. In the distance, her father walked into the room, his presence grounding. You did something incredible today, sweetheart, he said, his voice filled with pride. You stood up for what's right, and that's something that can never be taken away. The girl smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. Her family had been her rock, and now they were showing her that her actions mattered. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced by fear or oppression. I won't stop, the girl said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I'll keep fighting, for me, and for everyone who feels like they can't speak up. Her father nodded, his eyes filled with pride. And we'll be right here with you, every step of the way. The girl felt a sense of peace settle over her, knowing that she wasn't alone. Her parents, her community, and her own inner strength would guide her through the difficult times ahead. She was ready to take the next step in her journey. As the night fell, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. She had learned the power of standing up for what was right, the strength in speaking her truth, and the importance of supporting one another in the fight for justice. The road ahead might be long, but she knew she was ready to walk it. The girl smiled softly, her heart full of hope. I'm going to make a difference. I know it. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to stand up for yourself or others? How did it feel? And what did you learn from it? Share your thoughts in the comments below.